Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Retro Wrestling Review Series, Season 8, Episode 14. And I know it's been taking me a while to get this season done, but I've had to study for finals. I've been in Texas. I went to Austin for a few days, as you know, and then obviously I had those problems with my technical issues, but I plan on finally finishing this season. I got 3 more episodes to do, so, I kind of want to finish this season. Um, so I'm going to be doing that. Um, Today. I'm going to upload all the episodes today. Started with this one. And in this episode, I will be covering NXT Takeover San Antonio. This show obviously was this show took place during a Royal Rumble weekend, which kind of showed how big of a brand NXT was. Because pretty much with every Big Four event, you would the NXT special would air, which is really damn cool. Um, and NXT, even though it kind of went down a little bit, it wasn't really as big as it was. It started to kind of go down maybe a little bit during October, maybe September of 2016. But it was still a pretty big brand. The overall shows were still good. It still had great booking, and NXT Takeover San Antonio is another one of those examples. So let me talk about NXT Takeover San Antonio. I'm going to go over the matches, and then I'm going to review the pre-show all in one take, and then I'm going to review the actual show itself all in different takes. So that's going to be how I'm going to structure this. So let me go over the matches, though. We have 2 singles matches for this show. We have an NXT Tag Team Championship match, an NXT Women's Championship match, and then we have the main event. It's going to be an NXT Championship match, and those are all the matches for the show. I will go over more in detail of the matches as I talk more in depth into the show. But now that I've talked about, now that I've kind of done this introduction, let me start reviewing the show. Okay, so first we had the pre-show to this show. We had the panel of Charlie Caruso, Corey Graves, and Nigel McGuinness. I'll get into the aftermath of what happens with Corey Graves and Nigel McGuinness a little bit later on in this review. But as for Charlie Caruso, pretty much he would continue to host the NXT Specials pre-show panel. And she was much better here than she was at NXT Takeover Toronto. I thought she was kind of awkward there, but she was much better here. So that was good improvements. So now I'm going to go over what the official matches for this show were. We have a singles match between Eric Young and Ty Dillinger. We have another singles match between Roderick Strong and Andrade Cien Almas. We have an NXT Tag Team Championship match between the Authors of Pain and hashtag DIY. We have a Fatal 4-Way match for the NXT Women's Championship between Asuka, Peyton Royce, Billie Kay, and Nikki Cross. And then we have the main event. It's a NXT Championship match between Bobby Roode and Shinsuke Nakamura. So if you actually hear that card on paper, it actually sounds like a pretty decent card. But now I'm going to talk about build-up, and then once I start reviewing the show, we'll talk about if the card actually delivered itself. So, the first thing that happens on the kickoff is we had Corey Graves' announcement. This brings me to the aftermath between Corey Graves, and Corey Graves says that he has so many WWE obligations. He's the heel commentator for Monday Night Raw, as well as the heel commentator for WWE 205 Live, and he said he just can't do all those obligations as well as commentate for NXT, so he announces that he's stepping away from NXT. And this was kind of a sad announcement because, Corey Graves had been on NXT probably the longest out of anybody. He was in NXT originally when it was Florida Championship Wrestling, or FCW for short. That was the developmental brand before it was made into NXT. And it was kind of sad to see Corey Graves make this announcement. He had been a competitor there when the original members of NXT there, and then when it became NXT, like I talked about. Then eventually he had to end his career, and at NXT Takeover All Evolution, he announced he had to retire from the ring, so he became the heel commentator down in NXT, and he was pretty much was the longest NXT commentator down in NXT, because before he joined the commentary team, the NXT commentary team would change in cycles. You would get different commentators every week, but he became a permanent member of the commentary team down in NXT, and he became probably one of the best commentators in NXT. So it was actually kind of sad to see Corey Graves step away from NXT. But let's be honest, it needed to happen. It was getting it was a huge loss for NXT, for the NXT commentary team, but he can't do all these obligations. He's not just one guy. He's already doing commentary for Raw, especially too with the Raw exclusive pay-per-views at the time. He was doing commentary as well for WWE 205 Live. I think he can't, like he said, he can't do it all at once. So he announced that Nigel McGuinness, who ended up joining WWE like in December of 2016, he had commentated for the United Kingdom Championship Tournament, and he would be taking Corey Graves' place in NXT, and Nigel McGuinness also competed all over the world in the Indies, as well as TNA, Impact Wrestling. So Nigel McGuinness joining NXT definitely was a good thing. He's been a good replacement, and he adds that different type of voice to the NXT commentary team. So this show, and then would pretty much be Corey Graves' last time doing commentary for NXT. And after this show, then he would commentate for one more week, because they tape two shows in down in when they do the NXT specials. He would pretty much commentate. Nigel McGuinness pretty much after this show would commentate for NXT for the rest of the time, and now he's the heel commentator of NXT. So I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, it was definitely sad to see Corey Graves step away from NXT. Then we had the build-up for the NXT Tag Team Championship match between #DIY and the Authors of Pain. The reason why this match was happening was because #DIY went through this whole thing where they were chasing to go after these NXT Tag Team Championships, and they had failed the first time, and then they had finally won the NXT Tag Team Championships at NXT TakeOver Toronto, and arguably the match of the year of WWE, and they had even talked about that moment right there, them winning the titles, was validation after people telling them that they weren't charismatic enough, after telling them that they weren't good enough to be NXT Tag Team Championships. That proved everybody wrong. And they talked about how you're never going to find a story just like ours. Well, meanwhile, as they were chasing for those NXT Tag Team Championships, the Authors of Pain had made their debut in NXT. And they were managed by Paul Ellering. And, Paul Ellering talked about the Book of Pain and how the first one was to arrive. The first chapter, I don't remember exactly the words he used, but that's just pretty much, but how the first chapter was to arrive, and it shows them debuting at NXT TakeOver the End and completely destroying all the tag teams. And then the second chapter was to arise, and it shows them winning the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classics. And then the third chapter was to make a statement or something like that. And it shows them attacking #DIY and completely laying them out. And then NXT general manager at the time, and still the general manager to this day, William Regal, would make the NXT Tag Team Championship match at NXT TakeOver San Antonio between the Authors of Pain and #DIY. These were the two big teams down in NXT, and it made sense for them to have a match together. So overall, I liked it. You had the #DIY, who were the underdog tag team champions. You had the Authors of Pain, who were destroying everybody. They were the monster tag team down in NXT, and I think this was a great match to have. And they also gave out some awards on this show, because they they had but yeah, they also gave out some awards on this show. because WWE likes to give out awards to remember the good moments in NXT, and that's what they did. It was kind of like the Slammy Awards, and I'm just gonna try to pull it up on my phone. Oh, I messed up. Hold on. I know I should have probably pulled this up sooner. I apologize for that. I've had to review this show 3 times because I've actually had to watch the pre-show like 3 times because I've just been too busy to actually do it. But the first award was the Breakout Star of the Year, and it was presented by Nigel McGuinness. And the nominees were No Way Jose. You know, you have No Way Jose, who debuted in NXT in April of 2016. He was the fun lover No Way Jose. He loved to have a good time. And, you know, every time he comes out, it's always fun for him to come out. I always kind of want to break down and dance every time he comes out because he's just awesome. And he's good in the ring, too. The other nominees were Billy Kay and Peyton Royce, who became a collective unit in the summer of 2016, and they pretty much were taking everybody out in NXT. They were called the Iconic Duo. Then we have the other nominee, Ember Moon. She had debuted at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2, and she pretty much had been undefeated in NXT, hadn't lost a match. Then we have Andrade Cien Almas, who had debuted at NXT TakeOver The End as a big baby face. He was a match wrestler down in Mexico, and then he became Andrade Cien Almas, but he pretty much was a bland baby face. It really wasn't working, so then eventually he turned heel in October of 2016, and is still pretty much bland, so yeah. And then we have the final nominee, Sanity, who was a big faction that was coming into NXT. They talk about how they were gonna take whatever they wanted down in NXT, and they were just a pretty awesome faction. They were taking everybody out. So I'm going to repeat the nominees again. We have No Way Jose, Billy Kay and Peyton Royce, Ember Moon, Andrade Cien Almas, and Sanity. And the people that ended up winning this award were Billy Kay and Peyton Royce. I mean, it really wasn't like he had a lot of options to choose from anyways, because none of these people really accomplished anything big. You know, No Way Jose kind of didn't really accomplish anything too big. He had a few good NXT special matches, but that's kind of it. You know, Billy Kay and Peyton Royce really didn't accomplish a whole lot. They did take out the NXT Women's Champion, which I'll talk about that later on in this review. Ember Moon was still kind of just making an impact in NXT. She hadn't lost a match. If anyone probably should have won this award, it probably should have been Ember Moon. So, and then Andrade Cien Almas really didn't accomplish a whole lot. Like I said, he was a pretty bland babyface and really didn't do much. And Sanity will accomplish a lot, but they had just came into NXT in October of 2016. So, you know, it wasn't like you really had a lot of options to choose from. If I would probably to say who could have won the Breakout Star of the Year, I probably would have had any of these people win. I would have either had probably Shinsuke Nakamura, but you know he had won all other types of awards. But he was kind of a breakout superstar because he pretty much defeated everybody down in NXT. But if it wasn't going to be him, I would have had to probably Austin Aries. Just, you know, he had came in NXT, had great matches and stuff. But I guess they didn't want to have it be him either. But I probably would have had Austin Aries win this award. But anyhow, Billy Kay and Peyton Royce are all happy that they won this award. And, they talk about how they have a 100% chance of winning the NXT Women's Championship match. And Corey Graves pretty much says that he voted for them twice, and Billy Kay says that's why you're our favorite. And they say that they're both going to walk out the NXT Women's Champion. They have a 100% chance of winning. And Nigel McGuinness is like, but wait a minute, only one of you can walk out NXT Women's Champion. He's like, no, we win as a team. You know, if one of us wins, we both win. So I thought, you know, it pretty much shows that they're going to work together as a team. And then Charlie Caruso asks who gets to keep the award. He's like, well, we share because we live together, so we share everything. And Nigel McGuinness even made a joke that he wasn't an American citizen, so he didn't vote, which was kind of funny. But then they leave. I thought they were kind of good here. You know, they pretty much acted the way they should, being heels and stuff, so I liked this segment here. And then we had another award. It was the 2016 Match of the Year. A lot of matches here, so I'm just going to kind of go through them. We have a 2 out of 3 falls match for the NXT Tag Team Championships between NXT Tag Team Champions The Revival versus hashtag DIY. And this match took place at NXT TakeOver Toronto. We have a match between Finn Balor and Shinsuke Nakamura from July 13th episode of NXT. We have an NXT Women's Championship match between NXT Women's Champion Asuka and Mickie James from NXT TakeOver Toronto. We have an NXT Tag Team Championship match between NXT Tag Team Champions American Alpha and The Revival from NXT TakeOver The End. We have a match between Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura from NXT TakeOver Dallas. We have an NXT Women's Championship match between NXT Women's Champion Bayley and Asuka from NXT TakeOver Dallas. We have a 2 out of 3 falls NXT Championship #1 contenders match between Sami Zayn and Samoa Joe from the March 9th episode of NXT. We have a steel cage match for the NXT Championship between NXT Champion Samoa Joe and Finn Balor from NXT TakeOver The End. We have a match between Bayley and Nia Jax from the July 20th episode of NXT. We have a match between Ty Dillinger and Bobby Roode from NXT TakeOver Toronto. We have a match between Neville and Finn Balor from the March 2nd episode of NXT. We have an NXT Championship match between NXT Champion Shinsuke Nakamura and Samoa Joe. We have a 2 out of 3 falls match for the NXT Tag Team Championships between NXT Tag Team Champions The Revival and American Alpha from the July 6th episode of NXT. And then that's it. A lot of great matches here, a lot of great options. But obviously the match that ended up winning it was the match between The Revival and hashtag DIY from NXT TakeOver Toronto in the 2 out of 3 falls match. Obviously, I couldn't agree more. This match has everything in it. Great tag team psychology. Great psychology itself. Great wrestling. It's a great tag team NXT Tag Team Championship match. And I like it. I love it. And this award, by the way, was presented by Charlie Caruso. And the Revival get interviewed about this, and the Revival, say that they were also in that match was all plaque, and then they get the plaque, and they talk about how they pretty much revived with a pun tag team wrestling, and how even though the only thing that they hated was the outcome wasn't the way they had wanted it to go, but they were happy that they won NXT Match of the Year. And then that brings us to the next award, which is the NXT Tag Team of the Year. We have the nominees. We have The Revival, American Alpha, The Authors of Pain, TM61, and hashtag DIY. You have The Revival, who were the first and only ever 2-time NXT Tag Team Champions. They also pretty much had great matches with the likes of American Alpha and hashtag DIY. They were a great tag team down in NXT. They pretty much did revive NXT tag team wrestling. They made NXT tag team wrestling what it was. American Alpha, you had them who are a really over tag team. They won the NXT Tag Team Championships at NXT TakeOver Dallas. They were a pretty over tag team. You had the Authors of Pain, like I talked about, who were pretty much dominant down at NXT. You have TM61, who, were a pretty decent tag team. They debuted in a great match against hashtag DIY. So they did some good stuff, but they didn't really do enough. Plus, Shane Thorne ended up getting injured, so that didn't really help them out. But they did also make it to the finals in the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classics. And then hashtag DIY you have, who I just talked about earlier. But the Revival ended up winning, which makes sense because they pretty much did revive tag team wrestling. So they were bragging about how they won NXT Tag Team of the Year. And then Nigel McGuinness asked them what they plan to do to get back the NXT Tag Team Championships. And they said that they're going to be watching the NXT Tag Team Championship match with a close eye, and they're going to challenge the winners of the NXT Tag Team Championship match. So overall, I thought this was a very good interview. And then they say, top guys out. And one award I forgot to mention that didn't really get mentioned was they had another award called Takeover of the Year. It wasn't presented by anybody. I guess they didn't have enough time to give out this award. But the nominees were NXT TakeOver Dallas, NXT TakeOver Toronto, NXT TakeOver The End, and NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. But since the award wasn't given out, nobody won. But if I had to say the best takeover, it was probably NXT TakeOver Dallas. That's just a great wrestling show. The only it's pretty much perfect. All the wrestling's good throughout. There's only really nitpicky stuff I don't like about that show, but overall, that's probably the best takeover of 2016 is NXT TakeOver Dallas. But continuing, next, Bobby Roode gets interviewed, and he gets asked how he plans on bringing the NXT Championship home with him. And Bobby Roode says, "Look at me. I'm everything that screams about being a champion. The way I dress, the way I talk, the way I look. But the only thing that's missing is the NXT Championship." And he doesn't expect Shinsuke Nakamura to hand over the NXT Championship from him because he says that he's planning on kicking his head off to keep the title. And Bobby Roode says that he'd like to see him try because tonight I'm leaving with the NXT Championship and it's going to be, and he goes to say his catchphrase, glorious, but instead of saying that, he says, you know. But I liked this promo. It was very good, and I will talk about the build-up of this feud when I get there. One thing I forgot to talk about for build-up of feuds, I'm sorry I'm kind of going all over the place here, is they didn't talk about the build-up to the feuds for the singles matches. I'll just talk about that now. So the build-up for the match between Eric Young and Ty Dillinger, the reason why this match was happening was because Eric Young was the leader of the faction Sanity. They pretty much came into NXT, and the first person that they took out was Ty Dillinger. And you had Ty Dillinger, who was really getting over with his 10 chant, and they were trying to tell a story with him where he couldn't just he couldn't get that big victory down in NXT. He would always come this close, but he wouldn't quite get there. He was questioning whether he should call himself a perfect 10. He felt bad for letting all his fans down. But so Eric Young told him to join Sanity, that they could help really help make his career. And Ty Dillinger refused to join Sanity, so he ended up getting attacked by Sanity, which kind of led to this match. I thought the storyline in this match was great because of the fact that they were trying to tell that story about Ty Dillinger getting his big win, and the feud between Eric Young and Ty Dillinger was a fairly good feud. And then the reason why the Andrade, Cien, Almas, and Roderick Strong match was happening was because Roderick Strong and Andrade, Cien, Almas were both competing in a NXT Championship Fatal 4-Way Elimination #1 Contenders match, and Roderick Strong eliminated Andrade, Cien, Almas from that match, and Andrade, Cien, Almas felt like that Roderick Strong took away a chance for him to fight for the NXT Championship. So Andrade, Cien, Almas attacked him backstage, which led to the match, and that's really why the match was happening. So the two singles matches don't have a lot of storyline behind them. Maybe the Eric Young and Ty Dillinger match has some story behind it, but the Andrade, Cien, Almas, Roderick Strong match doesn't really have a lot of story behind it, but at least it's somewhat of a reason for happening. So, yeah, there you go. But I figured I'd talk about those matches. So now let's get to the and by the way, I know I'm going all over the place. The Tag Team of the Year award was presented by Corey Graves. I apologize for that. Now let me talk about the build-up for the NXT Women's Championship match between Peyton Royce, Billie Kay, Asuka, and Nikki Cross. You had Asuka, who was pretty much running roughshod over the NXT Women's division. She had never lost a match. She won the NXT Women's Championship from Bayley at NXT TakeOver Dallas in that match I just talked about. And pretty much she was beating everybody in her path. She defeated Nia Jax. She defeated Bayley again at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. And then she defeated Mickie James, who was a WWE Women's Legend. And Asuka pretty much said that nobody's ready for Asuka. No one's ready to step up to her. But meanwhile, you had Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, who had formed an alliance together. And they ended up taking out Asuka on an episode of NXT. They beat the crap out of her outside, dumped water over her. But meanwhile, as this was happening, Nikki Cross was also making her a force to be reckoned with. Insanity. She was the craze girl, and you had them have a couple of face-offs with each other. You know, Nikki Cross wanted to take the NXT Women's Championship from Asuka. So after Billie Kay and Peyton Royce had a match, Asuka tried to get some revenge for attacking her, and they ended up double teaming her. And then Nikki Cross ended up coming out and make the save. Asuka, and then ended up taking on Asuka. And Asuka went to NXT General Manager William Regal and asked to make the NXT Women's Championship match for NXT TakeOver San Antonio against all of them. She wanted to face all of them in a Fatal 4-Way match, and then that's kind of how that match came to be. They had a final face-off where Asuka and Nikki Cross went after each other, and overall the build-up of this match was actually fairly good. You know, he had Asuka, who had never lost a match, which was kind of what the main interest is, so I liked it. And then we had Ember Moon get interviewed, and she pretty much was helping break down this match. They asked her what Asuka needs to do to retain the title, and she said that Asuka just needs to go in there and just strike and kill everybody like she normally does. Corey Graves asked her strategy about how she should deal with Billie Kay and Peyton Royce since she's been in the ring with them, and she says that she needs to just KO one of them and get a submission, maybe on the other one to pin them. And Ember Moon pretty much is hyping up Asuka, and the important question is that Corey and Nigel McGuinness also asked, was it a mistake for Asuka to ask for a Fatal 4-Way match since she has a very slim chance of winning? And Ember Moon says no, because Asuka likes to rise to the occasion and likes to, likes competition, and she's just going to have the same strategy. And then Corey Graves pretty much like, you're really hyping up Asuka, aren't you? It's like you don't think the other of these women will win. But Ember Moon's like, no, any other of these women could win. You know, the alliance between Peyton Royce and Billie Kay could help, and then Nikki Cross, you have her who's very unpredictable and crazy, so any one of these women can win. And then Corey Graves asks, who do you want to face? And then she says, well, who I want and who I think will win are two different stories. And he's like, well, why don't you give me both sides? And then Ember Moon says that she wants Asuka to win because she wants to rise to the challenge and be the one to defeat Asuka and be the one to dethrone her, which pretty much planted the seed for the Ember Moon Asuka program. And then she says that who I think will win is I think one of these women could win. And that was pretty much the entire interview segment. I thought this was great. It helped plant the seed for Ember Moon and Asuka to have a feud in the future, and I thought it was good. And then we had the next hashtag DIY get interviewed, and they'll talk about that they're honored that the fans voted their match to be match of the year, and they say that they're the same fans that have believed in us, and they're going to help them pull through this match with the Authors of Pain. And they say that the Authors of Pain, they don't really know the book, but they're going to ruin the book of the Authors of Pain because they're not going to beat them, and they're going to give them Authors of Pain everything they have in their NXT Tag Team title match. I thought it was a fairly solid promo. And then we had the another award. It was the 2016 Female Competitor of the Year. It was presented by Nigel McGuinness. And the nominees were Bayley, Nia Jax, and Asuka. Not really a lot of options there because they were the three main women in NXT. And, you know, you had Bayley, who was the NXT Women's Champion in the beginning of the year. She was the underdog babyface, very lovable. You had Nia Jax, who was pretty dominant in NXT. But like I said, it's no decision. You have Asuka. I don't even really need to go into why. It's because she was undefeated in NXT, took everybody and defeated everybody. And Asuka won the award. I mean, it made sense. There was really no one else. Asuka deserved it. But Billie Kay and Peyton Royce win and say that there was voting fraud because they were the ones that ended up taking out Asuka, and they say that they pretty much take Asuka's award. So yeah, there you go. So I thought that was fine. Then we have the 2016 Male Competitor of the Year, and that was also presented by Nigel McGuinness. And we had the nominees of Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Bobby Roode. You know, you have Finn Balor, who was the longest reigning NXT champion and still is to this day. You had and you have Samoa Joe, who became the first ever two-time NXT champion, and he dominated NXT in 2016. You have Shinsuke Nakamura, who debuted at NXT TakeOver Dallas and defeated everybody down at NXT. All the top names like Sami Zayn, Austin Aries, Finn Balor. He won the NXT Championship at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn too. From Samoa Joe, then he ended up regaining it in his home country of Japan and becoming the second ever two-time NXT champion. And then he won the cage match against Samoa Joe a week later. So, and then you have Bobby Roode, who came into NXT and really made it a big deal. He was undefeated down in NXT, hadn't lost a match. So, yeah, so, you know, that's pretty cool for him there. But the winner of this is Shinsuke Nakamura. Makes sense because of his resume. Bobby Roode had really just come to NXT. He didn't really debut until NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Samoa Joe, you can make an argument for because of his dominance. But you know, you also have the thing where he lost the NXT Championship, and it took him a while to actually get to the NXT title. His title reigns were kind of short, so. But Samoa Joe is another one you could say was NXT Superstar of the Year. And then you have Finn Balor, but then you also have the Finn where he's more of the 2015 Superstar of the Year because that's kind of where he made more of his name. He had a pretty big impact, but then he lost the title at NXT TakeOver, actually on a live show, and then he was off NXT pretty much for half of the year. So you can't really say it's Finn Balor. I think Shinsuke Nakamura was the superstar of NXT in 2016 because he defeated all the top names down there and was huge down in NXT. He became really the face of NXT. He was the one they kind of put the most hype into. It's between him and Samoa Joe, and it's definitely Shinsuke Nakamura. And then we have the final one. It's the 2016 Competitor of the Year. And the nominees were, this was presented by Nigel McGuinness. And the nominees were Asuka, Shinsuke Nakamura, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, Bobby Roode, Nia Jax, and Bayley. The winner ends up being Shinsuke Nakamura. It's either or. I don't necessarily disagree with it because for the reasons I mentioned. But if anyone should have won this award, it should have been Asuka. She took the women's division by storm down at NXT, hadn't lost a match. But Shinsuke Nakamura was a fine decision. Like I said, it's also a popularity vote, so maybe the people that were voting liked Shinsuke Nakamura better than Asuka. But I'm not necessarily going to disagree with it. And Nigel McGuinness takes the award for him because and says he'll give it back to him another time. And Charlie Caruso tries to make a lame joke how he says Nakamura called me. He says he wants that award back, so it was kind of lame. And then we have the final thing on the show. It's the build up to the NXT Championship match between Shinsuke Nakamura and Bobby Roode. And this feud actually had some story behind it because the way because they have a similar rise in NXT. Like I said, you have Shinsuke Nakamura who debuted at NXT TakeOver Dallas, defeated all the top stars down in NXT, was becoming a huge deal. But on that same night, while Shinsuke Nakamura was being interviewed, Bobby Roode gave him his ticket to NXT TakeOver Dallas because Bobby Roode was in the crowd that night. Shinsuke Nakamura debuted. He pretty much debuted the same time that Shinsuke Nakamura did. And Bobby Roode comes in. He said that he was going to make NXT glorious and he was going to shape NXT into becoming more of a business-like persona. And I thought that was great. And he was making a name for himself down in NXT. And it was just only a matter of time before you're going to get Shinsuke Nakamura, Bobby Roode for the NXT Championship. And you did get that. Bobby Roode won a Fatal 4 elimination match to become the number one contender to the NXT Championship. And Bobby Roode says that he gave Shinsuke Nakamura that ticket because he wanted to represent that that's going to be the start of the change of NXT, because he talked about how Shinsuke Nakamura doesn't look like a champion, and he does look like a champion. And Shinsuke Nakamura says that he may be ready for change, but I'm not willing to give up this title, and I'm going to kick your head off. And Bobby Roode says, well, he's going to defeat him at NXT TakeOver San Antonio, and it's going to be, and he goes to say his catchphrase, Glorious, and Shinsuke Nakamura stops him and mocks his catchphrase, and you have that big face-off. And I thought this feud was great. They hyped this feud up as a big money match for NXT, and it made sense to have them go against each other. They were probably the two big stars at the time at NXT. You had Bobby Roode, who was the big heel, Shinsuke Nakamura, who was the big babyface champion. It was a match that was unpredictable. You didn't know whether or not Shinsuke Nakamura was going to keep his NXT championship since he had just won it back from Samoa Joe and in his home country of Japan. You didn't know if necessarily because of how big over Bobby Roode was getting. He was getting really good reactions. If he was going to become the NXT champion, we weren't sure what was going to happen, and then we were going to find out. So, yeah, that's pretty much it for the pre-show. Now that I've covered that, sorry I kind of was all over the place, but these award shows I think definitely messed me up. But yeah, now I'm going to cover the actual show itself, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. Okay, so we had the actual show itself. We had a very good hype video package for it. It kind of hyped all the matches on the show. And then we had the commentary team of Corey Graves, Tom Phillips, and Percy Watson. I already talked about what happened with Corey Graves, but Tom Phillips, pretty much I've talked about he's a piece of shit and a douchebag of a commentator because he texts people while he's on an airplane that he's going to face fuck them, and then he screws people out of their jobs, so that's what I think of Tom Phillips. And he would pretty much be the play-by-play guy for SmackDown, NXT, and 205 Live. Percy Watson would continue. They decided to add a three-man commentary team for some strange reason, even though it was working better before. But he's actually gotten better on commentary in NXT, so that's pretty damn cool. He started off very bad, and then he was good. He actually was commentary when NXT had the original thing where it was pros and rookies, and he was on the season 2 of NXT, and he was on NXT before it became the developmental brand, so he didn't have. It wasn't like he was someone that didn't have any experience in wrestling. And then we had the first match on the show. It was Eric Young with Killian Dane and Alexander Wolf. Nikki Cross wasn't out there because she has a match later on versus Ty Dillinger. I thought this was a good opening matchup here. The match starts off, Eric Young gives Ty Dillinger one final chance to join Sanity. He hands him his jacket. Ty Dillinger throws it in the face, attacks him, beats the crap out of him, and he clotheslines him out of the ring. And he goes outside the ring to continue the attack. But Killian Dane and Alexander Wolf stand in his way. Then Eric Young gets back in the ring. They continue going after each other. Eric Young takes him down and hits a bunch of right hands. Not Eric Young, but Ty Dillinger takes him down and hits a bunch of right hands on him. And then he hits right hand. He gets him up in the corner, does the spot where he hits the right hands in the corner, and the crowd counts. But instead of counting, they do the 10 chant, which is kind of annoying when they do that doing countouts and stuff. And Eric Young gouges Dillinger in the eyes, and this causes Dillinger to fall outside the ring. And behind the referee's back, Killian Dane hits a high cross body on him, and Eric Young. This allows Eric Young to take control. He hits a elbow drop from the top rope to the back of the neck and Dillinger, and he dominates Dillinger throughout the rest of the matchup. He hits like a Hangman's submission move while he's on the second turnbuckle. He hits a neck breaker on Dillinger, and then he goes to hit the Hangman's submission again, but Dillinger fights out of it. But before he can hit the superplex, Young pushes him off the turnbuckle. He goes to hit a move off the top rope, but Dillinger counters with a drop kick, and then Dillinger and Eric Young start trading blows with each other. Eric Young gets the upper hand, and then Dillinger grabs him by the beard and hits a headbutt on him, and he starts making his comeback. He throws him, and this causes Eric Young to go over the top rope after he hit the Irish Whip. And Eric Young goes to hit another move off the top rope, but Dillinger hits a belly-to-back suplex off the top rope. Dillinger covers him. Eric Young kicks out. And then Ty Dillinger goes for the tiebreaker. But Alexander Wolf comes in the ring, gets on the apron, and Dillinger pulls him in the ring, hits the tiebreaker on him. Then he goes to hit it again on Eric Young. But then Killian Dane gets in the ring. Dillinger takes him out with a super kick. And then Eric Young hits a blow to the back of the neck. He goes for the wheelbarrow neck breaker, but Dillinger counters with a roll up. Eric Young kicks out, and then he hits the tiebreaker on Eric Young, and he covers him, but Alexander Wolf puts Young's foot on the rope, and the referee sees it and breaks up the pinfall, and then Dillinger hits a crossbody outside the ring onto both Dane and Wolf. He puts Eric Young back in the ring, and then he hits a crossbody from the top rope on Eric Young, and Dillinger rolls him up, reverses it into a pin. Dillinger kicks out, and then Dillinger hits a drop kick, taking out Dane on the outside, and he goes to do the spot where the wrestler's holding the ropes, and he tries to flip back in, but then Eric Young catches him into a wheelbarrow neck breaker for the win, and Eric Young goes over. It made sense to put Eric Young over at the time because you really needed to put over that Sanity was a dominant faction, so it made sense. It continued the whole storyline that Ty Dillinger couldn't win the big match when it counted, so I thought that made sense. And this also continued this feud because afterwards, Eric Young and Ty Dillinger would continue feuding with each other. But first, the next night at the Royal Rumble, Ty Dillinger ended up being the number 10 entrant in that match, which was awesome. But he didn't win the Royal Rumble match. But like I said, then he would continue his feud with Sanity. Sanity and Ty Dillinger went on to compete together in a 8-person mixed tag match that also included No Way Jose and Roderick Strong, where they ended up Sanity ended up winning that match as well. And then they finally had the big Ty Dillinger was finally officially called up to the main roster on the SmackDown after WrestleMania 33, and but then Ty Dillinger had one more match down in NXT. He had the final blow-off match with Eric Young inside of a steel cage, which we knew that match was coming eventually, where Ty Dillinger was finally able to get his big victory down in NXT and won the match, and then it ended the feud. And now Eric Young is currently feuding with Roderick Strong down in NXT. So overall, both people benefited. Ty Dillinger's now up on the main roster, and Eric Young, this match benefited him in Sanity, which was good. And yeah, it continued the feud. So both competitors benefited from this match. Okay, so next we had Andrade, Cien, Almas versus Roderick Strong, and this was a good little match here. Just a nice mid-card match to decide which wrestler's the best. I like having those type of matches sometimes, not for championships, not just a personal feud. But it was just a good little match here. Probably not an NXT special type of match, but a good match probably to happen on an episode of NXT, which is kind of why it's only like a good little match. But the match starts off. They both start chain wrestling each other, and Roderick Strong gets the upper hand at first. He hits a sick elbow onto Almas. He knocks him outside the ring, and then Almas hangs him up on the top rope, and he starts to work over the shoulder of Roderick Strong. He drops it down on the mat, and he hits a wicked clothesline on him. Roderick Strong tries to make a comeback, but Almas hits a cross-arm breaker like over the ropes, and pretty much the rest of the match is Almas working over the shoulder of Roderick Strong. He gets him into a Fujiwara, but Roderick Strong's able to get out of it, but Almas hits a body slam while his arms behind Strong's back, and then he goes for a moonsault, but Strong moves out of the way, but Almas lands on his feet, and he ends up going to hit it anyways, but Strong's still able to move out of the way, and he hits like a big belly-to-belly throw, and Roderick Strong starts to make his comeback. He hits a sick drop kick onto Almas, and then eventually Almas tries to go off the top rope, but Strong catches him into a sidewalk slam into a backbreaker, but Almas kicks out of it. Almas continues to work over the shoulder of Strong. He runs at him and slaps him in the face, and then he hits a what else does he hit? He hits a big boot right to the head, and he gets him into a submission where he stretches Strong's arms back, which I thought looked pretty cool. Roderick Strong hits a sidewalk slam onto the top turnbuckle when Almas goes to hit the moonsault again. And Roderick Strong hit a drop kick on Almas. Almas goes for the double knees a couple of times, but Strong keeps reversing it. He hits a gore buster on him, a high knee in the corner. Then he hits a high knee when he goes to hit the running knee in the corner. And then Almas hits a neck breaker, and then eventually he hits the running knees in the corner. Then he goes for the hammerlock DDT, but Strong fights out of it. Hits a goes for another sidewalk slammer to the backbreaker, but almost counters that into a roll up. And then eventually Strong wins with the sick kick, and he gets the victory. Overall, a good back and forth match. But like I said, probably a match you would see on NXT. And it didn't really feel like I cared enough about the story in the match. The story just kind of wasn't there in this match either. But a good match, back and forth match between both of them. You know, Roderick Strong, I kind of already explained where he went. He would go on to enter the Sanity feud. And, you know, he just had a kid, so they just did like a big story for him. He would go on to have a match to try to become the #1 contender to the NXT Championship. And Andrade, Cien, Almas is pretty much in the exact same spot that he was. So, yeah. One thing I will say about Almas, though, is it definitely feels like that being a heel fits him more, but he's just bland. Whether you have him heel or face, but he's definitely better as a heel, but he's just pretty much bland. Okay, so next match was an NXT Tag Team Championship match. NXT Tag Team Champions, hashtag DIY versus the Authors of Pain with Paul Ellering ringside. And this was a really good NXT Tag Team Championship match. You know, hashtag DIY continues to raise the ball when it came to NXT Tag Team Wrestling. Like I said, having teams like the Revival, hashtag DIY, and the Authors of Pain really helped raise the credibility of tag team wrestling. Because I always talk about, as I've done with this series, that the tag team matches will always be good on NXT. You know, they didn't have a lot of story behind them, but they had enough. Well, this really helped like raise tag team wrestling in NXT, and it made me proud to see that. But the match starts off. Tommaso Ciampa starts off the match with Wezo, and Wezo pretty much outpowers Tommaso Ciampa any chance that he gets. And you know, Wezo keeps trying to go for a powerbomb on Ciampa. Ciampa keeps fighting out of it. And then eventually he tags in Johnny Gargano, and he goes to hit the spear through the ropes on Wezo, but Wezo swats him away like he's a fly, which I thought was pretty cool. And he's trying to hit quick moves on Wezo, but Wezo keeps overpowering him. And eventually the match breaks down. Hashtag DIY sprawls with the Authors of Pain. They clear out. They both hit a super kick and like a high knee simultaneously on the Authors of Pain. Hashtag DIY hit a double clothesline, I believe, on Wezo outside the ring. And Tommaso Ciampa hits a knee off the apron onto Akam. And pretty much the Authors of Pain, you know, the hashtag DIY cleared the win, and the Authors of Pain have to regroup. And eventually Johnny Gargano gets manhandled, and he gets thrown head first into the guardrail, and then Wezo pretty much picks up Johnny Gargano, manhandles him to the ring, and hits a power slam while he was on the apron. And the Authors of Pain spent a long ass time getting the heat on Johnny Gargano. Eventually, Johnny Gargano hits an enziguri onto Akam, but it doesn't phase Akam. He still ends up pulling him to his corner anyways, which I liked that spot. And the Authors of Pain hit a sidewalk slam, stomp to the chest combo on Gargano, covers him, Gargano kicks out. And eventually Gargano is able to get to Tommaso Ciampa, and Tommaso Ciampa hits a clothesline in the ring onto Akam, and then he hits a knee onto Wezo, and he really just starts going off like a house on fire, but he's unable to knock down each members of the Authors of Pain because they're just much too powerful. And then eventually he ends up taking down both members of Authors of Pain separately with German suplexes, which I thought was cool. Then he hits a knee to the side of the head on Wezo, covers him, Wezo kicks out. And then Gargano and Ciampa hit a... well, actually, no, that's not what happens next. They go for a power bomb neckbreaker combo on Ciampa, but he ends up countering it, and Gargano and Ciampa hashtag DIY hit a kick to the head knee strike combo um, on both members separately onto the Authors of Pain. The Authors of Pain then eventually hit the sit out powerbomb neckbreaker combo on Ciampa. Ciampa kicks out of it. And then hashtag DIY hit a double spear onto Razor. He kicks out of it. Then the Authors of Pain and hashtag DIY are both down in the middle of the ring. And they both start chaining right hands on each other. And what I liked about this was anytime that the Authors of Pain hit a right hand, it would just stop hashtag DIY in their tracks, which I thought was really showed how the Authors of Pain are strong. And eventually, hashtag DIY go for the meet me in the middle while both members of the Authors of Pain are in the middle. And then they both hit a super collider on hashtag DIY. And then the Authors of Pain hit the final chapter on Tommaso Ciampa for the win. And they become the new NXT Tag Team Champions. It did kind of stink in a sense because hashtag DIY, they told this great story about them chasing after the NXT Tag Team Championships. And in about a month, they ended up losing the NXT Tag Team Champions. So I feel bad for those fans. But I like to look at it like this. There's a few reasons why I'm okay with this booking decision. It still am. One, because you had the Authors of Pain who were running roughshod over the tag team division. They were dominant monsters, and you had to validate that push by putting the NXT Tag Team Championships on them. And another reason I'm okay with this was because it's better for some just with some baby faces. It's better when the baby faces are chasing after championships than when they actually are the champions. Because sometimes when they are the champions, the title reign can be pretty damn boring. Sometimes that can work when they're the champion, like when Bayley was chasing for the NXT Women's Championship, when she had finally won it. When she was champion, they still made enough of an underdog where her title reign was pretty entertaining. But hashtag DIY, they had finally gotten the titles. They would have gotten pretty boring and stagnant as a tag team if they just stayed the champions. So you really couldn't keep them as champions. They're a type of team that it's better for them to be chasing after the NXT Tag Team Championships, and eventually when they get called up to the main roster, the main roster Tag Team Championships, whether they go to Raw or SmackDown eventually, then they are actually being the champions. So that's why I'm okay with them winning the NXT Tag Team titles. Plus, you needed to keep the Authors of Pain are a nice dominant monster tag team. It made sense. And the aftermath of this is they pretty much have continued this feud. The Authors of Pain would hold the NXT Tag Team Championships, and hashtag DIY would have a rematch with them on an episode of NXT, where the Revival ended up re-entering the feud, and they ended up costing hashtag DIY their chance. So then it was made a triple threat tag team match with all three teams, with the Revival included, which was a great match where the Authors of Pain ended up retaining at NXT TakeOver Orlando. And now, I haven't seen the show yet, so at NXT TakeOver Chicago, hashtag DIY and the Authors of Pain are facing each other in the first ever tag team ladder match in NXT. I think that's absolutely fantastic and really helps help the evolution of tag team wrestling in NXT. So I think that's a great move on their part. So overall, this match is a really good tag team match. Okay, so next, Seth Rollins invades NXT TakeOver San Antonio. Now, the best reason, if you don't know the story behind it, is to talk about why Seth Rollins invaded the show. The reason why Seth Rollins invaded the show is obviously Seth Rollins originally was in NXT. He was in NXT as well as Corey Graves when it was originally FCW. He was the FCW champion down there. Then eventually he joined NXT when it became NXT. He was the first ever NXT champion. And he was signed by Triple H when it was the developmental brand. Triple H was there when Seth Rollins won the first ever NXT. Was the first ever NXT champion. Triple H pretty much made Seth Rollins down in NXT. Then eventually Seth Rollins, at the end of 2012, was called up to the main roster. And pretty much Seth Rollins and Triple H have been together on the main roster. He had formed an alliance with Triple H in May of 2014, May, June-ish, and they were together for a while. You know, he helped Seth Rollins become successful. He helped him win the Money in the Bank ladder match, win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, and they were together through everything. They dominated WWE. And then eventually Seth Rollins ended up getting injured in November of 2015, and he ended up having to vacate the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, which left Triple H having to find a new champion. And Triple H, pretty much handed Seth Rollins all of his success. Seth Rollins ended up returning at Extreme Rules 2016, and he was still a heel pretty much, which I would call was a mistake to keep him heel. He should have turned babyface. He was drafted. He was the first draft pick of Monday Night Raw in July of 2016 when he was drafted by Triple H's wife. Also, the CEO of WWE, Stephanie McMahon. And Seth Rollins kept failing Triple H time in and time out. He had failed at SummerSlam 2016 to become the first ever WWE Universal Champion, and during a Fatal 4-Way match to crown a new WWE Universal Champion, Triple H had finally reappeared. It was the first time we had seen Triple H since WrestleMania 32 when he had lost the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. And it looked like he was going to help Seth Rollins win the WWE Universal Championship, but Triple H screwed Seth Rollins out of the WWE Universal Championship, and he ended up turning on Seth Rollins. And Seth Rollins wanted to do whatever it takes to get back at Triple H. He said that he was going to go through every single one of Triple H's henchmen, and it finally got to a point where during the match on Raw, it was Seth Rollins versus Sami Zayn, where the winner was where if Seth Rollins lost, he would lose his Royal Rumble spot at the Royal Rumble, and Sami Zayn would get his spot. And Triple H's music played, which ended up costing Seth Rollins the matchup. So Seth Rollins really wanted to get at Triple H, so he picked a perfect opportunity, and he invaded what Triple H considered his child, what he considered his creation, NXT, where he got Triple H where it hurts, which I thought was awesome. This was the first time they had brought a main roster issue and brought it back down to NXT, which I thought was great. So what's going on is the commentators are hyping up the next match for the show, but then you see that the lights have been turned out because I don't think they wanted anyone to know that Seth Rollins was going to be there. And then Seth Rollins runs into the ring, and he says, "Show's called TakeOver, right? Well, I'm taking this bitch over." And he calls out Triple H so he could come out and fight him. And Triple H comes out. Now, you could see that this was a different Triple H than what you normally get. Instead of being the cerebral assassin, the game Triple H, this was the COO Triple H, which I thought was kind of awesome. It was kind of a different side of Triple H. Because Seth Rollins, by the way, too, had been trying to call out Triple H for months, and he just wouldn't come out. So he went to Triple H's home. But Triple H, instead of going to fight Seth Rollins, he calls for security. Seth Rollins does the best he can to fight off the security. He does a pretty damn good job of it. But then Seth Rollins goes to go backstage, and he's still trying to fight off security. New members are coming out, but then eventually the numbers just catch up to him, and Seth Rollins ended up getting tossed out of the arena. The crowd was chanting bullshit at it. They said, they were chanting to let him go, and it was just awesome. I thought the segment actually felt legit, and it actually just kind of felt awesome. It was a nice invasion. It was a nice way to utilize a main roster WWE storyline on NXT, and it worked on so many levels. And obviously the aftermath of this caused Seth Rollins to be banned from the Royal Rumble the next night because of his actions. This continued the Seth Rollins Triple H feud going into WrestleMania 33. Triple H would confront Seth Rollins that Monday Night Raw. This led to Samoa Joe being debuting on the main roster, and he ended up injuring Seth Rollins, so it was questionable on whether or not he was going to be able to compete at WrestleMania 33. But then eventually he did get his Mania match. Triple H and Seth Rollins fought in an unsanctioned match at WrestleMania 33, where Seth Rollins prevailed and ended up defeating Triple H. And Triple H now just kind of still runs NXT, and Seth Rollins is continuing his run on the main roster. So obviously this benefited Seth Rollins. This really wouldn't have hurt Triple H if he had won or lost, because Triple H is already a legend. So overall, this segment was great. Okay, so next match was a fatal four-way match for the NXT Women's Championship. NXT Women's Champion Asuka versus Nikki Cross versus Billie Kay versus Peyton Royce, and this match sucked. There's only one good thing about this match, and I will talk about what that thing is at the end. And it's nothing that's actually in the match; it's about the outcome, actually. But yeah, the match starts off. Asuka and Nikki Cross are just eyeballing each other. And Nikki Cross, by the way, comes out solo. There's no other members of Sanity out there because they have the whole thing where guys can't put their hands on women, but yet women can put their hand on guys. It doesn't make sense in this world, but yeah, because it's like frowned upon, which is really weird. Like it's frowned upon like when the guy does it, but when the woman does it, it's weird. Like the woman can like slap a guy in the face and people get cheered, but if a guy just decked a woman in the face, it's like, oh, that's disgraceful. It's just kind of weird how that works. But anyhow, that's a different video on a different channel probably. So yeah, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce are just standing in the middle of the ring, and they're like getting ready to fight Asuka and Nikki Cross, but they're too afraid because they're so dominant and crazy. So they just get out of the ring and just let Asuka and Nikki Cross fight it out, which made sense. I don't understand though why they were just standing in the middle of the ring. That didn't make any sense. But they kept teasing that they were gonna have Asuka and Nikki Cross finally fight it out because that's the match everybody wanted. What I didn't like about this match was Nikki Cross, I think, sucks. She's terrible. But yet they try to make it seem like she's like the same level as Asuka is. Dumb. That's just dumb. Asuka could wrestle. If Asuka and Nikki Cross got into like a legitimate wrestling match, Asuka would wrestle circles around Nikki Cross, and that's a fact. But pretty much what happens is Billie Kay and Peyton Royce cut them off, and they throw Nikki Cross outside the ring, and Asuka is able to fight off Billie Kay and Peyton Royce. She hits a kick to the gut of Billie Kay. She hits a kick in the corner on Peyton Royce, and then she hits a bulldog. And as she hits the bulldog, she takes Billie Kay down with a clothesline. And then it gets back to Asuka and Nikki Cross. Yeah. They try to fight it out, but yet again, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce cut them off. Billie Kay, though, ends up getting in trouble when Asuka tries to hit a German suplex, but she ends up holding onto the rope. So then, not Billie Kay, but Peyton Royce. So then Billie Kay goes to help Peyton Royce by hitting the German suplex, but then Asuka hits a double German suplex on Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, and then it's back to Asuka versus Nikki Cross. We finally get it. Nikki Cross looked terrible with those like right hands she was trying to hit on Asuka. That was just dumb. But Asuka wrestled circles around Billie Cross, like I said she should have. She hit a German suplex onto Asuka. She hit like a straightjacket German suplex. And then she hits a hip attack on Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, knocking them both off the apron. And this allows Nikki Cross to take advantage. She hits a straightjacket neckbreaker onto Asuka. She hits a reverse DDT, covers her. Asuka kicks out, and then Asuka gets the upper hand. She tries to hit a kick while she's on the apron, while Nikki Cross is on the outside. But Nikki Cross ends up pulling Asuka down to the apron, which I thought was terrible. And then she hits like a neck breaker while Asuka's on the apron, and this pretty much sends Asuka. Pretty much Asuka's like gone from the match. She's just selling the injury, which was good. And then Nikki Cross dives off the top turnbuckle and takes out Billie Kay and Peyton Royce. And then she goes to throw him in the wind, but Peyton Royce throws her back first into the guardrail. Billie Kay and Peyton Royce and Nikki Cross all fight up to the commentators' table. And Nikki Cross gets the upper hand. And then she goes to hit a dive right off the announcer's table. But Billie Kay pulls her, and she lands face first onto the announcer's table. And Billie Kay and Peyton Royce end up hitting a double suplex off the commentator's table through another table onto Nikki Cross. And Nikki Cross, she was pretty much done after this match. She was laid out through this table, and I thought the spot looked okay, but it was just to make me think that this match was going to be great, but it really wasn't. So then Billie Kay and Peyton Royce go back to the win. They pretty much dominate Asuka. Billie Kay holds up Asuka like she's got a German suplexer, and Peyton Royce hits a kick to the head. They both try to pin Asuka. Asuka kicks out of it, and then Peyton Royce acts like she's gonna cry after this. The fact, which I guess makes winning the NXT Women's Championship meaningful, but it just they dragged that out so much that Peyton Royce was crying. That was terrible. And then Peyton Royce tries to hit a bulldog on Asuka right into the knee of Billie Kay, but Asuka is able to kick Billie Kay right in the face. And then Asuka goes to kick Peyton Royce in the head, but Peyton Royce is able to block it, hits a kick on Asuka, and then she hits the Widow's Peak. And you think Peyton Royce is going to win the championship, but Asuka bridges out of the cover, and yet again Peyton Royce is acting like that she's crying. Instead of actually trying to win the match, she's like distraught that she did not win that NXT Women's Championship. Give me a break. What you should have done was either cover her again or hit another move and get back to work. But then what happens is Asuka hits a kick to the head on Peyton Royce, hits another one on Billie Kay, and then she hits another kick to the head on Peyton Royce, covers her, gets the victory, and retains the NXT Women's Championship because Asuka rules. That was the only good thing about this match, was that Asuka won. The right person won, because anybody else winning this match would have been stupid. Nikki Cross was way too soon for her to win this match. She does not even belong in contention for the NXT Women's Championship. And if she was the NXT Women's Championship, that's just a joke and a half. Billie Kay and Peyton Royce. The only one I would make an argument for out of those two becoming NXT Women's Championship is Billie Kay, just because she's more dominant. But it was still too soon for them to win the NXT Women's Championship. None of these women were the right person to end Asuka's undefeated streak. So yeah, and after Asuka celebrates, Nikki Cross smiles through while she's laid out to the announcer's table because she's supposed to be crazy. But yeah, this match was terrible. The match was way too short. And ironically enough, actually, I'm kind of glad the match in a way was short, because the match overall was terrible. Nothing redeeming about this match. The aftermath about this match was Nikki Cross continued to suck, always will suck, and will forever suck. But yeah, pretty much what happened is she continues to be a part of Sanity. I question why she's still under contract with the company, and she's now going to be she's now one of the two combatants in a triple threat match facing Asuka for the NXT Women's Championship. So yeah, terrible. Billie Kay and Peyton Royce are in the exact same spot, but like I said, it hasn't really been that long since this pay-per-view, since this special, so whatever. And Asuka's still undefeated. We did eventually get Ember Moon versus Asuka for the NXT Women's Championship, which was a really good match. I suggest you watch that match. And Asuka would end up we would get that match at NXT TakeOver Orlando, but Asuka ended up yet again retaining the title. And now Asuka always was someone that was a tweener. She would act like a heel, but still kind of act like a face. But in that match, she ended up turning full-blown heel. And Ember Moon was actually supposed to be involved in a Fatal 4-Way at NXT TakeOver Chicago with Nikki Cross and Asuka, but she ended up getting injured. And yeah, Asuka, so she has to sit out NXT TakeOver Chicago, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, the match was terrible. I've talked enough about this match. I'm moving on. Okay, so then we had the main event. It was a NXT Championship match. NXT Champion Shinsuke Nakamura versus Bobby Roode. Um, and to start off, Bobby Roode and Shinsuke Nakamura both get big entrances because that's kind of what you expect to see from these NXT specials. Um, Bobby Roode comes out, glorious. He comes out in fashion with like a bunch of women just holding him by his, by around his arms, which was a cool entrance. And Shinsuke Nakamura comes out in a hoverboard. He doesn't exactly use a hoverboard necessarily, but he comes out and like they have like a coat that's has a hoverboard on it. So I thought they had pretty cool entrances. And we get the match itself. Both men start chain wrestling each other, and Shinsuke Nakamura then does the spot where he puts his head on his opponent's like ribs and swings his arms around, and Bobby Roode pushes him off, and Nakamura challenges him to come fight him, but Roode, instead of charging at him like his normal opponents would, Roode's like, no, I'm not falling for that, and then he does his glorious taunt, and Nakamura just isn't buying into that, and then Shinsuke Nakamura and Roode start chain wrestling each other again. Roode ducks his head underneath the top rope, preventing Nakamura from going to attack him, to kind of play into some mind games with Shinsuke Nakamura. And then they start chain wrestling each other some more. I thought they hit some nice chain wrestling spots. And then Nakamura tries to kick Bobby Roode's head off a couple of times, but Roode's able to dodge the kicks. And Bobby Roode realizes he's outsmarted him, goes to do his glorious thing, and Nakamura hits a kick to the gut. And takes down Roode, hits a knee drop on the head, and then he throws him out of the ring. He beats the crap out of him on the outside. He hits a kick to the ribs, and then he hits another kick to the chest, and he goes for the good vibrations in the corner, but Roode is able to catch his leg and fight out of it, but Nakamura hits a enziguri to the back of Roode's head, and then Nakamura goes to charge at him in the corner, but Roode puts him on the top rope, and then before he can hit like a move on him, Nakamura kicks him in the head, and Roode pushes Nakamura off the top rope, and he takes an awkward fall on the outside. It looked like he either like hits like his neck or his shoulder on the apron or the steel steps, or maybe he hit both. And pretty much Roode takes control from this point. Roode throws him into the steel steps, and Roode gets him in the ring, covers him, Nakamura kicks out, and he hits a bunch of right hands, gets him into some headlocks and stuff, and Roode really starts to put a beating on Nakamura. He goes off the top rope and hits an axe handle to the back of the neck. He hits a knee drop to the face, and then he hits a knee drop to the back of the head, which was awesome. And then Roode hits glorious vibrations, pretty much stealing Shinsuke Nakamura's own move, which was awesome. And Roode tries to hit like tries to grab Nakamura while he's on the apron, but Nakamura hits an enziguri while he's on the apron. And then he hits this causes Roode to fall face first on the apron. Nakamura hits a knee to the side of the head while he's on the apron. Then he hits like a guillotine knee drop to the back of the head on Roode. And then Nakamura starts to make his comeback. He hits a lot of kicks to the chest. And then Nakamura goes for the kick while Roode's propped up on his side on the top turnbuckle, but Roode moves out of the way, and Nakamura hits his knee on the top turnbuckle. Roode hangs him up on the turnbuckle, and Roode goes to hit a top rope move. Nakamura moves out of the way. Nakamura goes for a reverse exploder suplex, but Roode's able to fight out of it. But then Roode goes to charge at him. Nakamura puts him up on the top rope, hits the kick while he's in the corner, and then he hits a reverse exploder suplex. And then Nakamura is setting up for the Kinshasa, but Roode just isn't getting to his feet. He's out cold, so Nakamura gets frustrated. He goes to go attack Roode, but Roode outsmarts him, hits a roll-up on Nakamura. Nakamura kicks out, and then Roode hits a spine buster on Nakamura. Nakamura kicks out of that, And then Rude goes to hit a superplex off the top rope. Nakamura pushes him off, and he hits a kick to the chest off the middle turnbuckle. And then he goes for the Kinshasa again. Rude kicks him and hits two big boots to the chest. And then he rolls up Nakamura and tries to use the ropes for the win. But the referee catches him. And this frustrates Rude. He goes for the glorious DDT, but Nakamura is able to fight out of that. And then Rude starts to get frustrated. He starts to beat up Nakamura, but then Nakamura does the spot again where he puts his head down and swings his arms around. Rude pushes him. Nakamura challenges him to come fight him. Rude charges at him. Nakamura kicks Rude's ass. He hits a ton of kicks to the chest, and he hits a kick right to the back of the head. He hits a good vibrations on him, and Nakamura just really starts to fire away at Rude. What else? Then eventually he hits good. He goes to go off the top rope, but Rude rolls out of the ring on the apron. No, actually, that's not what happens. Nakamura gets Rude into a cross arm breaker, and he turns it into a triangle choke. But Rude goes for a powerbomb. Nakamura fights out of it, and he hits a knee to the side of the head and covers him. Rude kicks out. Then he goes to go off the top rope, and Rude rolls out of the ring, and Nakamura hits a kick to the chest off the middle rope while Rude's on the apron, and this completely injures Nakamura's leg. He starts holding his leg, but Nakamura is able to fight through the pain, and he puts him back in the ring, and Nakamura is still kind of walking humbly on his leg, and then Nakamura hits the Kinshasa on Rude, and Rude's out, and this should have been the end of the matchup. However, Shinsuke Nakamura is selling the knee injury. He really acts like he hurt his knee, so he can't capitalize on the opportunity. Rude's knocked out in the corner, and the referee's checking on Nakamura. They send the medical staff to come out, and they check on Nakamura. Referee's checking on Rude. Rude eventually comes to, but he kind of still doesn't really know where he is. And Nakamura, they ask Nakamura if he wants to continue. Obviously, he does want to continue, so Nakamura goes back in the ring. But Rude immediately catches him into a glorious DDT. He covers Nakamura, and Nakamura kicks out. I thought that was awesome that he kicked out of it. It really popped the crowd, and it made the match feel like a big deal and showed that Nakamura didn't want to quit. So then Rude starts attacking the knee of Nakamura. He gets him into a single leg Boston Crab, and Nakamura is just screaming in pain. And it's at the point where Matt Bloom, the head WWE trainer, he used to be a former WWE superstar, comes out. He's checking on Shinsuke Nakamura, and Nakamura tries to get to the ropes, but Rude pulls him back, and Nakamura is able to counter it. He tries to turn it into a triangle choke, but because of the damage done to his knee, Nakamura just can't get the full choke on him. So then Rude's able to capitalize. He hits a second glorious DDT, covers him, and Bobby Roode wins the NXT Championship. This was an awesome moment, an awesome match, and I thought this match had everything. It had good in-ring work, but then it definitely had the psychology in it once Nakamura hurt his knee, and I thought these guys just really clicked together. I was kind of concerned whether or not they were going to click, just because Nakamura's only really worked with people, like Rude's been in the Indies and stuff before, but Nakamura's only worked with people like the Sami Zayns, like the Austin Aries, like Samoa Joe, who could kind of work his style, because they kind of have the same style he does. But he was able to work a good match with a great match with Bobby Roode, somebody that isn't as familiar with that style like Samoa Joe, Sami Zayn, or an Austin Aries would be. Because Bobby Roode really hadn't worked all over the Indies like they had. So I was actually quite pleased with this matchup. It was a mark-out moment because Bobby Roode, I want to think about it like this. Bobby Roode, a guy that had wrestled in TNA. And WWE, you could kind of see, was starting to capitalize on TNA's big mistakes. They had brought in Austin Aries. They had brought in Samoa Joe. They had brought in even now AJ Styles. These were all guys that were TNA legends. What do I want to call them? The standard bearer of TNA. And they were all in WWE having great success. You know, he had Samoa Joe, like I talked about. He was a two-time NXT champion, the first ever two-time NXT champion. He was dominant, you know. You had Austin Aries, who was actually having a decently well success. He was on his way to become a member of the Cruiserweight division. You had Eric Young now, actually, who was the leader of Sanity, who was running roughshod in NXT. You had you also had AJ Styles. Like I said, he was in the first match in TNA, but you had AJ Styles who was going out there. He had his first match in the Royal Rumble match for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. He competed at WrestleMania in great matches. He had match of the year candidates. He was, at the time, actually, he was the WWE champion. And they were merely doing some great things with AJ Styles. He was probably the superstar of the year in 2016. And then you have now Bobby Roode, who was a TNA original. You know, had done all these things in TNA. He was the longest reigning TNA World Heavyweight Champion. And he was doing some great things. And, you know, Bobby Roode leaving TNA, this was somebody that was very, you could even make an argument that was more of a TNA name than AJ Styles was, just because AJ Styles, at least, you could make an argument that was gonna succeed because he at least had competed in other things like New Japan Pro Wrestling, and New Japan and Ring of Honor. Sorry, I couldn't think of the name for a second. But you had Bobby Roode, who really only made his name in TNA. He was really a TNA talent. Yes, he had competed in other places, but he was a TNA talent, and they grabbed him, Bobby Roode, right after he left TNA. So it wasn't like he really had went anywhere else. So the fact that Bobby Roode was NXT champion, that's a mark-out moment. I also think about it like this. At least for 24 hours, you had AJ Styles holding the WWE Championship. You had Kevin Owens holding the WWE Universal Championship. Now you had Bobby Roode holding the NXT Championship. You had three guys that were pretty much, I would say, indie darlings / TNA stars holding the main world championships in WWE at least for 24 hours, because AJ Styles obviously would lose the WWE Championship the next night. So that was really cool, you know. Awesome stuff. So this match, I love this match. The aftermath, I'm just going to talk about with the competitors first. This feud would continue. Bobby Roode would become a great NXT champion. And Shinsuke Nakamura would be out because of this injury, storyline-wise anyways. And they would do one more blow-off match at NXT TakeOver Orlando, where Bobby Roode, once again, was able to retain the championship. And Bobby Roode, at least at this recording, but I haven't seen anything else, is still the NXT champion. Shinsuke Nakamura, on the SmackDown after WrestleMania 33, would make his debut on SmackDown. And he's doing pretty well for himself. I'm disappointed kind of how they're featuring him, because it feels like WWE, at least main roster-wise, doesn't really get how to feature Shinsuke Nakamura, because it doesn't really feel like they either want or they just don't flat out get how to book Shinsuke Nakamura, because now they're calling him the oldest Shinsuke Nakamura, the rock star. That's just stupid. They're having him cut long promos, which is something that he didn't do in NXT, so they're just kind of not really featuring him the way that he should be featured. But he's at least in a decent spot. He's going to be in the SmackDown Money in the Bank ladder match, which I can't complain about too much, but it's kind of like, they kind of killed his credibility because they had him go up on the main roster and they didn't have him have a match up until Backlash 2017, where he ended up winning. So that kind of, they're not featuring Shinsuke Nakamura as well as they should be. And another positive aftermath of this match is this might be one of my favorite matches of WWE in 2017. I love this match. You know, it's unpredictable. It has a great in-win work. It's got great psychology. Watch this match. It's a great match. I just spent almost 15 minutes talking about this match. I remembered every spot that was in this match, pretty much point by point. Now, I also did just watch this match, but I love this match. It's a great match. And I'm happy about the outcome and the aftermath for both competitors. So overall, I love this match. So overall, this match is a really good match. A great match, actually. So I definitely would recommend it. Okay, so next was the Facebook Live interview with Triple H. He was interviewed by Kathy Kelly, and pretty much what he does is he just pretty much kind of goes through the code and talks about what happened on the show, but kind of more in a kayfabe way instead of the way I just did it in this review, pretty much. But there was one thing that he talked about that I want to say. He talks about the situation that happened with Seth Rollins. Um, and pretty much Triple H says that gives his thoughts about it, and he says that what Seth Rollins did showed courage, and he shows. But he said that there was one time where I said that Seth Rollins was the man. Well, it's going to come a point where you see who the real man is in WWE, and he said that there's a difference between the guy that you see now wearing the suit than the Destroyer, and he says that the Destroyer is not far away, and he says that Seth Rollins better be careful what he was for, but then he might get it, and that was pretty much it. But I did like this interview, especially the stuff he said about Seth Rollins. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, overall, good interview. Okay, so now I'm going to give you my star ratings for each match, which I'm going to put in the description box down below, as well as my overall thoughts on the show itself. So let me start it off. For the Eric Young, Ty Dillinger match, I'm going to probably rate that match 3 stars. It's a good match with good storyline booking in there. For the Roderick Strong, Andrade, Cien, Almas match, I'm going to probably rate that match 2.5 stars. It's, a good little match there, but probably just a match you'd probably see on NXT, nothing more. For the NXT Tag Team Championship match, I'm probably going to rate that match 3.5 stars. It's a great NXT Tag Team Championship match with the right team going over. And one thing I forgot to mention is I even like the Authors of Pain special entrance where they came up with like skeletons on the head from like you would see in Star Wars. I thought that was really cool. For the NXT Women's Championship match, I'm probably going to rate that match 1.5 stars. It's just a terrible match. The only good things is that the match is really short and that the right person went over. And then for the NXT Championship match, I'm probably going to rate that match 4 stars. Just because it's a good in-ring wrestling match, has great psychology, and the right person ultimately went over. Those are my star ratings. My overall thoughts on the show is I actually thought the show was a really good takeover. I really enjoyed it. It's probably not my favorite takeover, and this isn't, like a great takeover, probably, like you would normally see. There's definitely better ones. NXT TakeOver Brooklyn's one that comes to mind. NXT TakeOver Dallas. But it's probably about the level maybe of like an NXT TakeOver Unstoppable and NXT TakeOver. Trying to think of like one off the top, maybe The End. So it's definitely like in that level. But the attendance. This is probably the lowest attended show since leaving Full Sail University. Because this was filmed in the Freeman Coliseum. It drew 95. The attendance was 9,465 people. Maybe because the arena here isn't as big. Also, they had to kind of deal with the fact that they had that video game convention thing, because my friend went to that when the show was airing, so maybe people were like that. But overall, I still really enjoyed this show. I thought the in-win work was great in this show. I thought the booking on this show was great. So overall, if I had to rate the show, I'll probably rate the show an 8.5 out of 10. It's just a really good takeover. The pre-show is even good. The Triple H Facebook video is good. The Seth Rollins invading the show is awesome. What really hurt the show was it just was probably that NXT Women's Championship match, and like I said, it's just not the one of the best ones. These matches just were good. So sometimes you can't you can enjoy a show, but you can't really say that it's an amazing show. But this is still a good wrestling show. This show was definitely better than the Royal Rumble show that aired the next day. So can't really make any complaints, because I think when I got into the show, I really wasn't looking forward to it all that much at the time, but then it ended up blowing me out of the water. So overall, double thumbs up show. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys for watching this video. I'm glad I finally was able to get this video up. I've been trying 2-3 times. Please make sure to check out my Cien Brothers and No One the Talkinator channel. I'm going to be uploading a video tomorrow on my own The Talkinator channel. And please make sure to subscribe to this channel as well for other content, because I'm going to be uploading content all week on this channel. And that's pretty much it, guys. Talk to you later.